Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, the Africa CDC makes a clarion call for action, declaring a public health emergency over a particularly aggressive strain of mpox. Also, Senegal press are still and airwaves fall silent of news for a day of protest against economic measures that critics warn threaten freedom of the press. And Africa's returning Olympians bask in the afterglow of the Paris Games. South Africa's only gold medalist, Tatiana Smith, is welcomed back with cheers as she leaves a stellar competitive career in her wake. Now, the Africa CDC, or Centers for Disease Control, has declared its first ever public health emergency over the most recent mpox outbreak that began in DR Congo in September, but has since spread to other countries. Over 38,000 cases and more than 1,400 deaths have been attributed to the virus on the continent since the start of 2022. Mpox infections surged globally that year, but Africa has a tougher time responding because of a scarcity of vaccines, which is particularly worrying considering that this latest strain is especially virulent. Vedika Bal has more.
These infectious pus-filled lesions are due to the mpox virus. And according to Africa's top public health body, the speed at which a new, more transmissible strain is spreading is causing grave concerns, causing it to trigger its first ever public health emergency of continental security.
This is not just an African issue. Mpox is a global threat, and it is in this moment of vulnerability that we must find our greatest strength and demonstrate that we are all learning from the COVID lesson, and we are playing solidarity.
Formerly known as monkeypox, mpox is transmitted through close contact, causing rashes, bodily lesions and flu-like symptoms. It was first detected in humans in the Democratic Republic of the Congo in 1970s, but the latest outbreak has spread to neighbouring countries, including Burundi, Uganda, Kenya and Rwanda. In 2022, a milder strain of mpox spread to over 100 countries, causing the World Health Organization to set off its highest alert. But according to experts, the current situation is more severe.
In fact, if you look at the period, the most recent period, the number of cases in Africa is more than triple what it was when the peak was declared in 2022.
According to the latest CDC data from earlier this month, there had been over 38,000 cases of mpox and over 1,400 deaths in Africa since January 2022. The WHO's emergency committee will now decide whether to trigger its most serious alarm, a public health emergency of international concern.
DR Congo says that a fragile August 4th ceasefire brokered by Angola between M23 rebels and Congolese forces appears to be holding into its second week. Angolan President João Lourenço is in DRC this week as part of a peace process to end 2.5 years of brutal conflict that's displaced almost 6 million people. Emmett Livingston with more.
Congo's Foreign Minister Therese Wagner has said that a ceasefire in the M23 conflict, brokered by Angola, is largely holding. M23 rebels, who are backed by Rwanda, launched an armed insurgency in late 2021 and have since captured swathes of North Kivu province in eastern Congo. Over 1 million people have been displaced, many of whom live in dire conditions in squatter camps. And according to independent experts commissioned by the UN Security Council, up to 4,000 Rwandan soldiers may be deployed in North Kivu in support of the M23 rebels. The conflict has cratered relations between Congo and its smaller neighbour, Rwanda. But Congo's foreign minister says the latest peace initiative is positive.
L'entrée en vigueur du cessez-le-feu à partir du 4 août à minuit.
The ceasefire came into force on the 4th of August at midnight and, except for some small exceptions which haven't passed unnoticed, we're in an encouraging dynamic in which the ceasefire is largely being observed. So we're maintaining this positive dynamic because we reiterate that the ceasefire will create the right conditions for us to deal with the fundamental questions.
Angola, which the African Union has designated as the mediator in the conflict, brokered the ceasefire deal, which came into effect on August 4th. However, M23 rebels, only several days later, captured more territory in North Kivu province, ignoring the deal. While Congo's government is positive about the ceasefire, many analysts expect fighting to continue. Previous ceasefire agreements in the conflict of over 3 years have failed after only a few weeks.
Emmett Livingston there. Now, there was a news blackout in Senegal on Tuesday as broadcast and print news organisations protested against measures that they say amount to a crackdown on freedom of the country's press. Editors from both private and public outfits accused authorities of seizing equipment and freezing bank accounts over outstanding taxes. Sam Bradpeace has more.
The midday broadcast on RFM is normally one of the most listened to shows in Dakar. But on Tuesday, there was silence. That's because media bosses across much of Senegal have called for a day without press, in protest at new taxes levied against the media by the government, which they see as unfair.
Press companies are by definition loss-making businesses. There have been various internal and international crises, plus unprecedented tax harassment since Ousmane Sonko came to power. All the ingredients are in place for these media to die.
Many other news organisations joined the protest, showing this image on screen to mark their disdain. Other media, like Walfadjri, haven't followed suit. Ayoba, one of their employees, says that the Day Without Press has been organised to serve the needs of greedy press barons.
In recent times, a number of journalists have been arrested. There was Pape Alinyang, Pape Ndeye, Teodoro Mandela. For me, this was a valid reason to organise a day without press, but some bosses of the major media groups were formally opposed. Today, there's a real rift between press bosses and journalists.
In the streets of Dakar, reactions have been mixed.
All Senegalese people must pay tax, but the government should take it easy on the press.
The president should gather all the press organisations together and discuss with them. The press should be free.
The communications minister said he wants to initiate dialogue with media groups on the condition that they are transparent about their finances. He insisted that those media who cooperate will receive economic support.
A former commander of the Lord's Resistance Army rebel group in Uganda was convicted on Tuesday of dozens of crimes against humanity in a landmark trial that began in 2019. Thomas Koyelo was accused of a raft of charges, including murder, enslavement and rape, committed between 1992 and 2005. He's been in detention since 2009 and denied directing brutal attacks on civilians displaced by the LRA's rebellion. Well, the band is back. South African Olympians received a hero's welcome not far from Joburg on Tuesday as they returned from the Paris Olympics. Amongst those still being cheered on by crowds were 4 times 100-metre relay silver medalists Baganda Walatsa and Bradley Nkwana. And of course, Tatiana Smith, who returns with the country's only gold medal for the 100-metre breaststroke. She says she's still riding high, but that she's also hanging up her goggles.
It is a bittersweet pill to swallow that I am finished. This is probably maybe one of the last times I'll be wearing the green and gold. But yeah, just being able to walk out at the end of the Olympics with the flag, just what it meant of representing our country. It's had its challenges.
Well, as the stars of the continent showing at the tournament start heading back home, sports fans are still basking in the afterglow and happily ramping up for round 2, the Paralympics. Our African eye on the Olympics, Bulela Tinta, is gladly back. Bulelo, so first of all, what are your highlights of the last fortnight?
Well, you've just put a smile on my face. We see the great Tatiana Smith for the last time. So kudos to her. She really just tugged at my heart there. But my highlights, I've got to be honest, is we mustn't get bored of greatness. I know in this time of readily available information, whether it be on the digital airwaves or more information than ever, we think great will come along often. The great, a Ugandan treasure, Josh Cheptegei, for me, winning the fastest 5,000-meter race of all time, was certainly the the male highlight of the Olympics for me. A Ugandan treasure, one of one, and he leaves his track career behind, and he will now chase down the great Mo Farah and those greats in the marathon. That's where he will focus at the age of just 27. The greatest 5,000 and 10,000 meter track runner of all time leaves the track. So that's been one real highlight for me. But the absolute highlight is one of one. This woman is just unstoppable. She is the greatest middle distance runner of all time, the only human being, man or woman, to ever win 3 1,500 meter races in a row in terms of Olympics. That's 12 years of utter dominance in an event that is absolutely brutal. Oh, and by the way, in between all of that, she squeezed in having a baby, by the way. So she wasn't exactly having a picnic. The great Faith Kipyegon. That word is overused, I think, in this day and age, but apt for this incredible dynamo from Kenya. Just absolutely incredible. But my favorite story, and this one, I'm wearing a shirt that you'll see here. It's actually from Cote d'Ivoire, but I made no mistake but to wear the Botswana colors of Botswana, because we have a wunderkind, a precocious talent at the age of 21 that will live, we hope, for the next 3 or 4 Olympics. The first African man to ever win the 200 meters at the Olympics. Of course, a blue label event like the 200, never been done by an African man. And I tell you what, the Botswana in Botswana are so proud of this man, because he's also doing this with his mother having just passed away. His composure, his elegance, and his ability, cometh the hour, cometh the man. It was just unbelievable. At the age of 21, his composure. And I tell you what, there was a public holiday in Botswana, and the people in the streets could not stop celebrating him. I tell you what, they were going absolutely berserk for this young man.
Sana, I'm very proud of all the athletes that went to represent our nation.
We are happy for them. They made us proud. Yeah.
The country is so excited. Everybody's, songs and prayers, everything.
And those who didn't know Botswana know Botswana now.
At least they know Botswana now. There's a country in Southern Africa called Botswana.
They certainly know Botswana now.
Deboho there, winning hearts. I mean, to be honest, I actually saw him race last Friday, and I was very surprised that he was the one that I was screaming my head off for. So, I feel like I have a little bit of an understanding of the perspective of his countrymen. But, we've just had a bit of a roundup of some of the highs of the last fortnight, but it's time to look ahead. Do you think Africa is as invested in the Paralympics?
Absolutely. And, as Africans, we want to be clear that we no longer want to hide behind the veil of political correctness and our differently abled and disabled athletes. We kind of just tick boxes. No longer is Africa doing that. I can tell you from 2 sources in particular, one from the United Nations said, let's not worry about the medal count. Let's celebrate the strides Africa is taking forward to give these human beings the greatest golden thread in Africa. It is dignity. Dignity for me is summed up quite easily. Dignity is the opportunity to endeavor. Every single person, I think that can resonate with you around the world. Disabled, differently abled athletes, the Paralympians, we wish you nothing but the best from Africa to the world.
Thank you so much, Bulelo Tinta, there with a roundup of Africa's performance at the Olympics and hoped for the Paralympics. That, though, is all the time that we have for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. Do so again if you can. Till then, take care.